What's up, YouTube? Welcome to the Not Entertained Podcast, your home for entertainment, media, and culture. I'm your host, Gentz, and on today's episode, we'll be giving our personal opinions on the console looter shooter genre. Back with me for today's episode is Cafe. What's going on?
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen?
I want to give some context for this conversation. This episode is kind of a derivative of a conversation that I started on Twitter on February 20th. So I posed the question to our followers, and the question was, is Borderlands the best looter shooter to date? And I didn't expect to get a lot of feedback or interaction, but this has probably been one of the most talked about discussions on our Twitter page. So shameless plug, go over there and follow if you're not already. We got a lot of comments, we got a lot of interactions and retweets, but overall everyone seemed to agree with that sentiment, being that Borderlands is the pinnacle of the so-called looter shooter genre. Now, what's important to note about this tweet is that I posted it on February 20th, and this was 2 days before the launch of Anthem on February 22nd. I don't really want to do a deep dive on Anthem's launch or highlight any of their mistakes, but I think at the very least, BioWare would have to agree that the game hasn't been received or performed as well as it could have. Because of some of the struggles they're currently in the mix of trying to remedy, they haven't been able to leave a strong first impression in this relatively small market space. So as far as looter shooters go, I don't know why I thought, and I'm trying to keep this to console titles for the most part, but as far as I know, there's a very small pool of these games. You have Anthem, you have Destiny, you have Borderlands, and then the more fringy of those would be, not fringy, but the most not as obvious or to make the connection would be the Division. What makes this conversation so timely is that Anthem just came out February 22nd. It's March 8th right now. Division 2 comes out next week on March 15th, I believe. And now there's rumors swirling that Borderlands 3 might get teased or announced at PAX East later this month. So I think this is a good time for us to kind of talk about this genre and see what makes it appealing to gamers wholesale, and then some things that we like about it and some things that we don't care for or what we think can make it better going forward. So how do you feel? Have you had any experience playing any looter shooters, or do you have any of those four that I named that are your favorites?
Oh yes, really Borderlands. Borderlands did it right both times.
Did you play the pre-sequel as well, or are you just speaking specifically on 1 and 2?
One and two.
Okay.
I did not play I did not play the prequel.
Or the VR?
I did not.
Yeah.
But the first two, that took my attention. Especially because it's really because the variety of weapons. See, you weren't going around finding the stronger version of the same weapon.
Right.
You instead found new weapons that were stronger.
Right.
And there was an abundance of weapons in that game. So I would say that's one thing that they did right, and just the overall gameplay was solid. That's around the time of the what was that, the cell shade.
Yep.
So I mean, that didn't bother me.
They made it work. They definitely made it work.
It did.
So
I had a lot of fun with friends playing that.
Oh, for sure. See, now what's interesting about what you said is that, I mean, I know you could, like, quote unquote challenge people directly, but there was no real PvP environment in that game.
Right.
And something that you brought up was the randomized or random rolls on the guns that you found. I think they added some raids or like missions that I mean, a lot of the missions you could replay obviously if you start a new character, but they had certain weapons that were locked behind specific missions. So like if you killed a boss, you would get the boss's gun and stuff like that, and then if you played on harder difficulties, then you got better versions of that gun. But for the most part, you didn't need that gun to feel effective or useful in the course of the game. You know, if you wanted to play with an SMG, then you didn't have to defeat a boss that has the best SMG, and that's the only one that you get to use. Like you can have 5
Okay.
SMGs and they all deal different types of damage. They all
All right.
have different, little quirks and how they reload or their aim or whatever it might be. And that's what's kind of one of the defining components of Borderlands. And I think the other thing, which is probably the most obvious or that I come back to the most, is the story. The story was great. Like it was funny, it was silly, it was deep, it was impactful. You felt like you had a role to play in the events going on around you. It wasn't just something like you were on the sidelines witnessing, and you didn't. You felt like you had the weight of the length of the story, or the what was to unfold in the length of the story. You felt like you had a part in versus just watching it through someone else's eyes, or feeling like, if you didn't play the game, then it wouldn't have mattered regardless. You felt like you had some control over what was going on, and it felt like you were tied to the other characters in the game, the other NPCs in the game, and you had your favorites, and all that other kind of stuff. Also, like you mentioned, the art style. I think the art style really set it apart from all the other games, all the other shooting games in the genre at that time. And something else that's really important for me about games with shooting or varieties of weapons and classes is that each gun needs to have its own distinct feel. And a lot of the times you pick up a gun and it just feels like you just point and click, and you don't really feel a difference between a shotgun and a sniper, or a pistol and a assault rifle or something like that. And that kind of takes away the fun of wanting to grind or look for more guns or try out different things. But with Borderlands, the guns felt different, they shot different, and then they had their own little perks on top of it. Again, going back to the attachments on them, or the way they reloaded, or buffs that they gave your character, or debuffs that they gave your character also.
Yeah, the detail.
Exactly. So there are some other loot oriented games, I'll say, that can also be brought up in this conversation. One of those being Monster Hunter. I would say Monster Hunter, even though when you kill monsters in the game, weapons don't drop off them, but you replete missions in order to craft weapons, and then you can craft better versions of those weapons, and there's tiers and bonuses to each weapon, and there's far more weapon types to choose from. So I think they deserve a mention here. Another one would be Warframe. Again, Warframe doesn't have the you kill an enemy and a weapon drops here thing. It's it's the grindiest of grindy games. There's always a new weapon to grind. There's always new components to grind. There's always something to do and a gun to improve on. And lastly, I would add Diablo. Diablo does have the kind of satisfaction that you get in defeating a strong enemy, and the chances of them dropping equipment that you can use or sell. Or so I think if we separate the shooters and also just want to have a general conversation about loot-oriented games, I think that those other games would need to be brought up. And I think, each of those are good in their own rights as well, and can give players that have, played Destiny they got tired, or Division till they got tired and want something else to play. I think those would be some games that I would recommend for them to still give them that same kind of feeling of reward for defeating tough enemies, or grinding to get a weapon that they really want to enjoy playing with.
Now, Destiny, funny you should mention them. They are currently, for me, they are at the top of the genre, because they pretty much took up where, I'm not going to say where Borderlands left off, but they did take the place of there being no more Borderlands games.
Yeah, when there was a hiatus, right?
Right. But the thing with them now, though, is that they've kind of gotten stagnant now.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not trying to change anything. There's, everything's pretty much the same as the first game. And that's where Borderlands still has them, is they changed. 2 was different.
Right.
I mean, everything about that was they changed it. So
they kept the structures in place, but they continued on with the existing story. They just pretty much built on everything that they had already established in the first one without taking any steps backwards.
Right.
And I think that's what's important. And You know, a lot of people with Destiny, they feel that it was the same game, but you're still paying full price for not much that has changed. You know, maybe
Very
one or two,
disappointing.
right? Maybe one or two different types of enemies, maybe some new game modes for PvP, but PvP is not your thing, then you know that doesn't really do much for you. I will say that the future of Destiny is obviously has the potential to change course just because Activision is no longer going to be involved. So we'll see what happens going forward with Destiny. I think people will jump to lump in the next iteration of Destiny in with the first two games. So I think they'll have a lot to show the community that their title is going to be that much different than the games that came before. But how you do that and how you convince people is going to be really difficult. It's a similar situation to Treyarch Studios and Infinity Ward Activision with the Call of Duty games. You know, it's two different publishers with their own spin on each title, and they had unique quirks in the game, actions that you can do while playing that made the game experiences completely different. That you could say, oh, I like the one by this publisher more or that publisher more. But now that Destiny is no longer going to be in a relationship with Activision, we'll see where they go, and you know, if there was any limitations or opportunities that were being held back on previously because of the relationship with Activision. We'll see that going forward. So what I wanted to bring up to you is why I think, even though the market space, if you think about it, is kind of small. I mean, there's only really, up until Anthem came out, there was only 3 games essentially in this genre with Destiny, Borderlands, and The Division. What I will say is probably the most addictive thing about this game and what hooked me on Destiny when it first came out is the satisfaction of weapons dropping from bosses and going into places looking for chests to open. I mean, Borderlands is probably like one of the only games that has like the most interactive or unique chests that you're like, you can't wait to open it, and they all open differently and you know what I mean.
Right,
um
right.
and I think that's really important. But I think that that aspect of the looter shooter genre is the most addictive thing about the genre itself, and other companies have noticed that and have started to take that feeling and put it into other genres of games. So can you guess where I'm going with this?
I can kind of see, but I'm gonna let you go ahead.
So I think they took that experience, they being a bunch of days, but developers took that experience of looting and finding guns and killing people to get rewarded for more guns, and they took that and they put that into the Royale experience. Think about what's the most fun thing to do, or what you need to survive in every Royale game that's out right now. You gotta find loot, you gotta get it fast, equip it, and then you gotta hunt other people down to get more loot and better loot in order to survive. And I think that's what one of the things that's so addictive about the Royale experience is that despite the PvP aspect, there's this hidden thrill of launching into an area, trying to find all the loot that you can, making the most of it, and then you know it's a free for all and finding everybody else that might have gotten better stuff than you. So it's taking the PvE experience out of the looter shooter genre and making it strictly PvP.
Now, I knew you were headed there, and I just had to wait to see.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine Borderlands on acid. You're gonna have all those weapons. Only now they'll be harder to find, and now you have a PvP experience through
Oh, oh,
Borderlands.
you don't think we're gonna see a Borderlands battle royale? You don't think that's on the way?
Oh yes,
Oh, I think so.
yes.
I think
Oh
it'll be on
yes.
the way, and I think what they'll do is
You could
something
bank on it.
similar to what Destiny 2 was trying to do with their latest mode. I think, what's it called? Gauntlet, I think it's called Gauntlet, where it's PvPVE, I think they describe it as, where players start off fighting against monsters in their own area and they take down those monsters, and then once they do, it opens up a path to attack the other team that's on the other side. Rather than something as clunky as that is, I know some people find it appealing for Destiny. I think it'll just be a huge map, and all of the, zany characters and monsters that are in Borderlands will be present in this map, and you'll have to navigate these bosses and gangs and creatures coming out of the ground or whatever they want to do. People on the what are the cars called? I forgot. Whatever they're called. I think that'll be fun. They had a couple different types of vehicles in Borderlands 2, and then they added a couple more with the pre-sequel. So, you already got two locations right there. You can do one in space. You can do a space battle royale. You can float around. You got to collect oxygen, because oxygen was an important resource for the pre-sequel game. Or you can keep it on Earth, and then you have to deal with a host of more creatures and whatever else. But I could really see them bringing in all of their bosses and mini bosses throughout those three games, putting them all in one map, and then throwing players in the midst of all of that just to make things a little different.
So, what would you say about Dark Souls? Would that not have been considered a looter shooter in
Dark
its own way?
Souls. I would put Dark Souls in with the Warframes and Monster Hunters and Diablo category,
Okay.
just because there is some shooting involved with that, but that's not like the primary method for, it's not first person shooting, and it's not, you
I
can't
mean,
just
not
use your
not in
gun to
that
kill
manner.
everything. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
see what
not
you're
in that
saying
manner,
though.
but yeah, like you could come, you could come up upon someone and then you could kill them and take what they had,
Hmm.
and they've lost it,
I think that would be dope if they did
and that
like a
like it was on site.
if they did, and this is something that I think I could see Borderlands doing, or and just to go back to your point, I think somebody needs to come up with a hand-to-hand battle royale experience. I know there was that game Absolver, but it was kind of clunky, didn't really work. But hand-to-hand is where it's at. If they can get like a technical hand-to-hand fighting system, and there's no guns at all, and it's all hand-to-hand, I think that'd be fired. Like,
So funny you should say that. So that sounds like an opportunity for the game For Honor. That would sound like a game mode they could add to their game.
yeah, but even then they have weapons still, you know what I mean? Like, I'm
Okay,
talking
so
straight up,
truly hand to hand.
yeah, I'm talking straight up fisticuffs.
Oh man.
um but again, I'm selfish because I like fighting games, so I don't know
Oh, okay. Power Stone.
something like that. Yes,
Yeah, okay.
something like that.
You kids today would not know about Power Stone.
You don't know. You don't know that. I'm
Hey,
trying to
man.
think what would have what engine would have like the best opportunity. Kind of like, even if it was like putting it in like the most dumbed down fashion, but think about it like this, right? Even with quote unquote professional wrestling, they had the Royal Rumble. So imagine a Royal Rumble but in a bigger area. You know what I mean? You
Mm.
got 64 or however many people it was, all in one space, and whoever comes out on top comes out on top. It's like you could be fighting one person and then somebody drop kicks you from the next corner here, it's like I think that'd be dope. But again, the combat system would have to be technical enough where it's fair but still competitive. There would need to be a learning curve, but I think for the people that find learning how to get better aim and playing on PC because consoles are too slow and cross compatibility and unfair advantages with stuff like that, I think aim bots and all, if it was just hand to hand, like you can just avoid all of that. You don't have to balance a whole bunch of weapons. You don't have to worry about keeping stashes of ammo for every different kind of gun, or making that kind of, you could just have maybe some body armor and maybe some brass knuckles, if that at all, and then just have people meet pull up, meet me over here at the waterfall, and then I'm gonna whoop you, and then meet me over here for the kumite at whatever such and such time. I think that'd be dope.
I'm sitting here thinking about what formats could that type of game be made in, and I'm thinking about a MOBA that if you get a kill, or like remember the team kills in Paragon.
Yes.
Imagine there being loot left behind after the team kill.
That would be cool.
Yeah, you still got to make your way to the core. Only now, because you've lost people. There's the other team is stronger. Now you have to strategize on how you're going to get your loot back.
Yeah,
And then in the jungle, there'll be more loot that you can get, but you're going to have to be careful because there's someone that's probably waiting on you to try to get the loot, or maybe they're trying to get the loot themselves.
for sure.
Huh?
Like, imagine if it's like this is probably too many. They would have to make it a number where the games wouldn't last forever.
Mm.
Maybe you do 20, 25. But what if you have 25 people on a map, and the map is not going to be gigantic here? 25 people on a map, and I guess the game goes until there's, let's say, 5 people left, and then once there's 5 people, that's when you get the circle or whatever the waypoint is to get to that area. And then once you get there, then it's like a tournament. Like the game changes in a way, it's not a free for all anymore. It becomes like a tournament where you take on whoever showed up and made it to that point.
Oh wow.
Kind of like the Cell tournament. So it's like you start off with 25 and then you end up with another number, and then you do 1v1s until there's one person left.
And and you tell me if you disagree. Let's just go ahead and clear up where the battle royale gameplay even came from.
Well,
So
it came from, well, as
the
far as I
movie.
know, yeah, as far as I know, it came from the movie in Japan.
Okay.
But
Okay.
as
Hunger
far
Games.
as the looting aspect, I definitely think it came from the experiences in Destiny, Borderlands, and the Division. Like I don't see that, because imagine battle royales without the looting experience. Like, would you think that's fun? Like, what if everybody starts out with weapons and there's no, instead of having to look for weapons, you just have to look for ammo. You know what I
Well,
mean?
the part of it I'm thinking about, though, I mean, besides the weapons, is the entire game itself. See, there were parts in Hunger Games where the arena would get smaller.
Right. Right.
They would close off areas of the arena to make it, to make them run into each other.
Yeah.
And I dare to say that it comes from that.
I think
I
that
mean, slash
aspect,
King of the Hill too.
yeah, I think the only reason why they have to do that is to prevent people from just camping the whole game, and then you gotta spend 30 minutes trying to find somebody on a huge map that's just camping, waiting for, you know what I mean? It's like, that's
Right.
not gonna be fun. So this is their way to prevent people. I mean, you can still camp, but at least you have to move at some point. You can't just stay somewhere forever in the best hiding spot that everybody knows about, and then, you know what I mean? That wouldn't be fun.
Right, right. And see, this is what brings us now to Apex, because it hurts you to camp in Apex. You cannot camp in that game. You must go out and loot and hunt, or else you're not. When you come across a team that's been doing that, and you chose to, sneak around the entire game, and say you survive, but you have white, blue armor, you're gonna get chewed up
Yeah, for sure.
because you didn't the game rewards you for being
Violence.
on the offensive. Yeah, exactly. You must be violent. I love that game, man. That game is quite the success.
All right, so I know we took a tangent from what we originally started talking about, but just to get back on track, the Division 2, do
Yeah.
you think that it will make large strides from the first game? And where do you see the game potentially putting themselves at risk for not having a successful launch?
Okay, in order to answer that question, I'm gonna have to go back to the first one. For me, I lost interest. The gameplay was repetitive.
Yep.
Uh, the What was the area that you had to go in order to play the
Dark Zone.
Dark Zone? Okay, Dark Zone, because of how the Dark Zone was set up, it I was uninterested.
Right.
I mean, someone could wait for you to enter the Dark Zone,
Right. And
and
just
then
camp at the
and
door.
then yeah, and then
Yeah.
and kill you.
Mm.
There
Plus,
was
people
no,
were cheating and hacks, and it's
terrible.
it's really easy for people to there was no way to balance out the experience so that people at the same level, equipment level, could
Mm-hmm.
challenge one another. It would be somebody that's been in there all day, hasn't touched the PvE experience, and found somebody that just got to the end game of the PvE experience and is just walking into the dark zone for the first time. I'll agree with you there. For me, where where the Division has to make a bigger stride is with the story. Like, you got tired of the mission structure, I got tired of the mission structure, but
Mm-hmm.
before you even got into the mission structure, like, I just didn't care about what was going on. You told me people were sick, and I never saw sick people other than people asking me if they could have water for a scarf. And I'm like, okay, here, this feels good. I skipped all the cutscenes as much as possible. I skipped all the audio clips I picked up. I didn't feel invested. I didn't care. And then you could walk around the streets and see absolutely nothing. There weren't any dynamic characters or NPCs that you really fell in love with or enjoyed. That's where I'm more worried about the success of the game. I'm also concerned about the bullet sponginess of the enemies. I played the open and private betas for the Division 2, and I still kind of got that sponginess vibe. It's not as bad as it was with the first game because they changed the way armor works and the
Okay.
way you apply damage. But again, I was still kind of going around, going to this location, shooting stuff, going to this location, shooting stuff, going to this location, try to save somebody, trying to turn this off, trying to turn this on. I just didn't really, it didn't do it for me. Now, obviously, this is just a small segment of the game, but I'm kind of, it seems from what I've played and what I experienced so far, it seems more like Division 1.5 than the Division 2.
See, that's
Now,
that's 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 yeah, that's a bad sign.
yeah. Now, let's just say Borderlands 3 is announced this month. Do you think that's going to be better than Borderlands 2 or Borderlands the pre-sequel?
Okay. For that, we'd have to see because these titles, they have a way of making you look forward to them. You know, these are titles that we're familiar with, and they have experience in making, in making the type of gameplay that that we've loved and pretty much have other people have mimicked even now.
Right.
But these heavyweights, is the development team still the same? Is the director still the same? See, these
Uh,
things change over time, and I don't know that, much like uh, Mass Effect, not a looter shooter, of course, but it's still a game that everyone had high expectations of, and they failed. So I would hate for that to happen with Borderlands.
yeah.
That would crush me
Mm,
because they did it the best.
yeah.
We're still talking about the movie now.
I mean, I still play Borderlands 2. I was just playing it last week.
Okay, hey, see, it's gold, man. So those things. If those things change and the person does not have, they lack the vision of the prior team, it's we have to see.
Yeah, I think the biggest obstacles to the next Borderlands title is just going to be the timeline. Is this going to be shortly after Borderlands 2, way after Borderlands 2? You know, what's the state of the vaults? What's the state of the vault hunters? Who's still alive from the old games? Because that's one of the big things that was a draw for Borderlands 2 is that you ran into the characters that you played with in Borderlands 1. So if this happens way after and those characters aren't alive anymore, then what does the game look like? When you take away cherished characters like Moxie, or I forget the dude, the gunrunner dude, if you take those people away, then what is the game? I'm assuming Claptrap will be in the game because you can't have Borderlands without that.
Of course
Um,
not.
that would be my biggest concern, is that if they start fresh, be it way before Borderlands 1 or way after Borderlands 2, I think they'll have the hurdle of trying to get us to fall in love with characters that we might be missing because it's been so long since we've seen them. The only
And
other thing that I would want, which is not really a hurdle, but it's just a selfish desire of mine, I just want more classes. I wouldn't mind an extra skill tree also. I think they do a really good job with the 3 skill trees that they give every character, but if I can get like a fourth skill tree and then, 6 characters to start with instead of 3 or 4, I think that would be dope. And when I say 6, I mean 6 at launch. I don't mean DLC later like what they did with Borderlands 2. Even though I didn't mind and I bought it, but still, I think if there was more variety with the characters that you started off with at launch, that would be a nice little change up, especially if they're gonna go and give us a whole new cast of characters.
I agree. What
All
about Fable though?
right. That we just gotta.
I mean,
I
Fable was
I could
was
be super off with this, but last I heard, Lion's Studio closed, but Microsoft Studios, bought the rights to it. So at some point, Fable might come back. I don't know what happened. I think the development stopped on the card game they were trying to put together for it also.
okay.
But I think I could be wrong again, but I think Microsoft Studios has bought the rights to it and is currently developing or recruiting development for the game, but Lion's Head is gone. And
Oh man.
gone forever.
Yeah, I see. I have high hopes for that game as well because I, the second one, man, the second one was great.
I
I spent so much time on that game because it was all about leveling up and looting.
Yeah. I think I preferred Lost Chapters, which was like what 1.5 or 1.8 whatever.
Okay.
I think that one was my favorite, but I think I played all of them. I played 1.5, 2, 3. I might have even played one of the spin-off games, but then I decided not to do that ever again. But yeah, Fable was really good. Really good storytelling, really good action, really good decision making and choices, environments, comedy. But yeah. All right, guys, this is where we're going to leave the episode for today. Let us know what you think about the upcoming looter shooter genre. What do you think of Anthem? Do you think they'll turn it around by the end of 2019? Are you excited for Borderlands 3? Are you going to be pre-ordering The Division 2? Let us know your thoughts in the description below, and make sure that you follow us on Twitter as well. We'll catch you guys next time. Peace.